Good afternoon, and we are going to call to order the special board meeting for the Akron Public Schools Board of Education for Thursday, March 19th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar.
Here.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Ms. Autry.
Here.
Mr. Bravo.
Present.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Here.
Thank you.
And if we could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. And before we begin the meeting, I'm going to ask Ryan to do a couple of housekeeping measures since this is our first time using a live stream.
A couple housekeeping items. We're doing a live stream to the public via YouTube Live. That's being picked up through the cameras that we normally record the board meeting. For those dialed in and watching, the boardroom is set up to maintain our social distancing. So it's a little different configuration. If board members, when you are speaking, if you'll keep really close proximity to the microphones like I'm doing, then David can hear and we have much better clarity to the outside world. And then the final component is you don't see any public here. Any public that has joined us today have been encouraged to attend on the second floor where the meeting's being live streamed.
And do we have confirmation that the second floor is able to see and hear us? Is anybody communicating with our booth downstairs?
I do know that the technology staff here in the booth went up and tested that right before the board meeting. They had been working on it all morning. So okay. To my knowledge, yes.
And that kind of leads into just a brief discussion. I want to give everybody an update because there have been some questions as our staff really worked hard to figure out how to make this meeting happen and to make sure that it was streamed live and available. And most of you know that Ohio Attorney General David Yost did issue some guidance in the form of a letter to public entities, keeping in mind that he does not represent those public entities, and this is not a formal Attorney General's opinion. But the reason for my question about the booth as well and the live stream is that because we are not allowing public to be present in person during this meeting, part of the guidance, at least, that's been issued up to this point does sort of maintain that the public needs to be able to hear everyone. So that is why we also need to make sure that we are speaking into the mics and that everyone can hear us. And if at any point we are informed by the booth or anybody else that the live stream is not working, we need to immediately stop discussion until it's back up and running, and then we can resume the meeting.
I just got confirmation, and again, Mr. President, if you could talk a little closer to the mic like this. I just got confirmation that the second floor is hearing and seeing us.
Good, thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask Diana Feidel to come up and talk a little bit more about this opinion, what the current state of our belief is as to how we're conducting our meetings, allowing public access or not allowing public access, meeting virtually or not meeting virtually, and then Ryan to then talk also about some of the legislative initiatives that are in the works right now to address some of these concerns.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Diana Feidel. I'm serving as the board's attorney at the time, and I just wanted to provide you all with an update about the Open Meetings Act, the guidance from Attorney General Yost, and sort of what our position has been at the Board of Education. As the board president has mentioned, the Attorney General has given us guidance on what is a really difficult time right now. We are trying to balance the orders that we receive from our Director of Public Health with our statutory duties under the Open Meetings Act. Part of those statutory duties is for elected officials to be present at meetings and to ensure that the meetings are open to the public. As you know, based on some of the orders calling for closures, calling for social distancing, limiting group gatherings, sometimes those can conflict. The Attorney General gave a guidance. It is not a formal opinion. Even if it was a formal opinion would not provide any cover to a Board of Education because the Attorney General doesn't have that authority over boards of education. Because of that, it's nothing more than a guidance. The statute, as it is written, and in fact today, applies. And so that is why we are having a meeting that is open to the public. No one has been turned away. And we are also here present in person so that you can reach your quorum in person and vote and deliberate in person. In addition to the Open Meetings Act statute that applies to all of you as a Board of Education, we also have 2 board policies that also state that in order for there to be a quorum under your policy, the members of the board have to be present. And in order for a vote to be counted under our board policies, the board members must be present. So in light of the statute being written as is and not being amended to date by the General Assembly, and in light of your board policy saying that you have to be here in person, was why we decided to make sure that the board meeting here was, all of our board members are present in person and it is completely open to the public. Now, moving forward, all of this can change as we are living in this new normal, hour by hour, day by day, things can change. And it is my understanding that the General Assembly is going to be coming back into a session and considering some proposals that could give us some flexibility and permit virtual meetings without jeopardizing any of the actions we take here in a public meeting. Until then, our position has been that we will have to be here in person to reach a quorum to vote and to ensure that the meetings remain open to the public. Any questions? Mr. Alexander.
I have one question in regards to what the Ohio Attorney General sent out, and it requires the Sunshine Law, the modifications it says on page 107 and 109. Do we have any idea what that states? Are they limiting some of those things or saying that we can not have to abide by some of the sunshine laws when it comes to this emergency situation?
Yeah, so right now, the General Assembly is the one that has to amend those sunshine laws, which includes the Open Meetings Act. And to date, they have not done that.
So we have to continue to abide by the sunshine law?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you, Mr. President.
And before we turn it over to Ryan, I do think this is another one of those examples, too, where from the Legal and Board Policy Committee, it might be wise to take a look at our policies and rather than restate what current law says, maybe reflect that in that particular policy, so in the policy where it says all board members must be present, maybe state rather that it refers back to state law and that we will abide by state law regarding in-person requirements. That way, in the event, because right now, if state law changes tomorrow in an emergency session, our board policy, which we could waive, but still requires us to be here, and it doesn't always maybe make sense to restate what's already in the statutes rather than refer back to them, but that's something you guys can look at. I want Ryan to also talk about legislative initiatives and what he's hearing from. We consulted with our legal counsel, but we also consulted with law firms outside of our own.
I have a question about what you just said, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So in lieu of the legal contracts and board policy committee meeting to do that, could we as a body pass a resolution that says that if a change happens on the state level, that we would abide by that and that will take a temporary place of our board policy?
We could. We would first need, and Diana could certainly back us up, we'd need to make sure that we knew what we were saying in that resolution or that action. We'd need to suspend the rules and waive the 3 readings since it's a change to policy, and then we'd need to approve it. But I think if we could probably do that in a brief statement as a resolution.
So do we? Oh. Sorry.
It's a new normal.
Yes.
I think that's something that we can definitely look into moving forward, and certainly something we can convene about after this meeting. I can take a look at things and report back to the board.
So we have a meeting on Monday that might be a good item to have for us to do on Monday.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President? Yes, and I agree with Dr. Akbar, because I would hate to change our policy and then we have to go back to re-changing it again, so we can do a resolution just to suspend them for this certain period of time, and I would think it would be better for us to do that versus have to change policy and go back to change it again. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
this morning we had a Ohio 8 meeting, and that was one of the issues that our lobbyist is going to be bringing up to the governor's office, because all of our districts in the state have a concern and, really around, I think, more of a lack of guidance in terms of what's legally required. I mean, we do have the, the auditor of state and the attorney general, we felt gave maybe some conflicting information around that. And so we think, our conversations with the representatives in the governor's office might add some more detail to what the expectations are, particularly, as we move through, this health emergency in the state.
Thank you. Mr. Pendleton.
I don't really have a lot to add. I know David and Ohio 8 were on the phone this morning and have been every day. We've been on the phone also with representatives from the Ohio Department of Education, almost a direct conduit to the governor's office, talking about some of those limitations placed on boards for, just like we talked about. They've created a pathway for a number of us, especially the larger urbans, because now we have 2 or 3 law firms who represent the large urbans with the same advice of counsel to boards about how to conduct meetings. So our voices are being heard, and hopefully we get some legislative relief soon.
Good, thank you. Before we move on, I guess, and we'll continue having these conversations too, but speaking of committee meetings and board meetings and those sorts of things, our staff, obviously, their focus is on the kids and continuity of operations for the district, and we want to make sure that their focus remains that way. So to the extent that we can, we will be limiting agenda items to essential agenda items related to ongoing operations and business and things like that, things that keep us moving forward. But to the extent that we can take out the non-essential items or non-essential meetings, or at least postpone them for some time until we adjust to the new normal, our staff will certainly respond if you want to have a committee meeting or there's something you want to continue to address, and they will meet as you request because it is your meeting. I would just ask that everyone use their best judgment when calling those meetings to make sure that our staff can focus where they need to be focused. Are we, anything else before we?
David, do you have anything else for public before we go into exec?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. With that, then, we do have a need to recess into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 121.22G1 to consider compensation of public employees, Revised Code Section 121.22G3 to conference with legal counsel for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action, and Revised Code Section 121.22G6 relative to the security arrangements and emergency response protocols for a public body or a public office. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for to recess into executive session. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion before we do so? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Akbar?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes, we are in recess. During the COVID-19 emergency, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We're just going to knock on the window. Should we repeat it?
No, that's good. They're good.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we make sure, do you have those?
I do.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the resolution before us? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Akbar?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
And I'd like to open it up for discussion at this point on employee compensation under extreme circumstances.
Yes, so, Mr. President, I think that this is an extreme time, and it causes for us to do everything we can to take care of all of our employees as much as we possibly can. And obviously, we have to reserve the right to make changes as circumstances are definitely changing almost on a daily basis, it seems. But I would like to move that we authorize the superintendent and treasurer at their discretion to begin processing payroll and further develop a resolution that provides for the continuity of payments to our employees through April 10th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'd like to open it up for comments, question, or discussion. No comments, question, or discussion. All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. McKittrick?
Yes.
Dr. Akbar?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Autry?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to general comments, question, or discussion before we entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there any other discussion that we would like to have today?
I just want to make one comment and publicly thank the district administration and staff for everything they've done in these unusual times. Dr. James, Dr. McWilliams-Woods, Ryan, Deb Folk, and a whole host of other individuals have been working around the clock almost. We've been getting emails and calls almost all day, depending, no matter what time it is. And it just shows the strength of APS, and I just want to say how proud I am to be connected with this district.
I would second that.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
I just got an update from Deborah just as we were walking in and got to go to a few buildings today just to say thank you, and no handshakes, so you just do this and tell them it's from your heart. But we fed 5,000 students the first day. You said 9,000 the second and 14,000 today. So the numbers are have definitely jumped up. The word is getting out, so just putting it out again. A huge thanks to those who are in the buildings. They're standing by also. They were standing by passing out Chromebooks today when I was in, and they were standing by passing out the paper for the little ones, the Blizzard bags. So just huge thanks to the staff. They were very upbeat. They're so excited to see the students. Also to all the staff that's been contacting us various ways, who are either teaching lessons online already or checking in with their students just so they get a little bit of face-to-face. Just huge thanks to them and to this board, just coming together through such an unbelievable time and quickly learning to work together. So thank everyone for that as well.
Yeah, so Lisa, so Ms. Mansfield actually probably should have gone last because I actually have a couple questions I wanted to ask about that. So I would echo everything that she just said. So I know we're at 14,000. I know that we have 20,000 students in the district, so we're trending in the right direction from 5 to 14 is fantastic. I guess my question, because I've gotten a couple emails about this too, are we considering other alternative methods of advertising or distribution as it relates to other? I mean, I guess trying to think, how can we get more meals out to folks as well? That was sort of one question. Another question I've been asked is, let's say a family comes in on Tuesday and they know they can't make it on Wednesday. Can they take 2 days worth of food with them when they go? So I got a couple sort of nuts and bolts, sort of more pragmatic questions about the mechanics of the distribution. So that's where I want to start. One of the schools I visited, the building principal had a recommendation that I think she thought was very small, but I liked the idea about where we sort of look at the signage about outside each school. It says, hey, meals available here. So that way, as they're driving by, they see, so we know very clearly which schools are and are not. Because one of the schools I drove by that I went to on Tuesday, I would have had no idea meals are being passed out there because there wasn't a car in the parking lot. And the school was just closed. So I pulled up, and there were people that were actually sitting inside that were passing out meals. So now that was the first day. Yesterday, there were way more cars in the parking lot. But again, just sort of sharing some of those experiences. And I think, Ms. Folk, you're going to address some of that stuff.
All right. To be part of this wonderful opportunity, it is an application through ODE to USDA to put into fact the waivers that were allowed us to do this.
Okay.
It is very prescriptive as to where we may feed from, and that is our particular school buildings. And students actually were originally, Dr. Hall had to be on site to get this food, and then they gave us a waiver late Friday that said an adult could come, and a second waiver came in saying that an adult or child could ask for more than one meal.
Okay.
So we are adjusting to those adjustments from USDA almost on a daily basis as this particular, I don't want to say crisis, works forward, but we also have another call with USDA and ODE tomorrow morning. So we are obviously trying to adjust those needs. We are putting out all calls. We've actually put out all calls in 8 different languages. So we're trying to get those because we're never sure who answers the phone. Right. And because of the great amount of information people have shared on social media, the word is getting out. A child of any age, not necessarily an APS student, between the ages of 1 and 18 can come. And Mrs. Kepler has been working with Red Oak, AMHA to try to address some of those odd requests, but to deliver them to homes, you then run into the fact that students may have dietary restrictions, modifications to their diets. Many of our special needs students aren't even at their homes. So this is why it's well done at our buildings that have proper food temperatures. They have the proper food license to allow us to serve. We meet those criteria, and we can meet the criteria for social distancing at the same time. So I think you'll see this as it moves forward. We will see more flexibility, hopefully, but you still want to be accountable to the actual meal program and to the health and well-being, because those menus are set up to help those students nourish and grow at the same time while they're at home.
So one sort of follow-up question then. So hypothetically then a parent could show up on Tuesday and get meals for the rest of the week.
Not at this point.
Not at this point.
The only time that we are allowed to give an additional meal is on Thursday.
Gotcha.
So at this point, you wouldn't need to, let's start with Monday, because tomorrow was really supposed to be a professional development day and students wouldn't have been in session.
Right.
You need to report on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you will get an additional meal on Thursday. That's the only approval that is out there at this time.
Okay.
All righty? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Ms. Folk.
So I just want to add to that. So I just want to thank Ms. Folk for a robust explanation of how this works. So I'm adding that to what Ms. Mansfield was, her speech and her accolades. I just want to add Ms. Folk to that list as well. So thank you.
Absolutely, always. She's the best.
Very good. Other comments, questions, discussion? Yeah, and I thank you, Dr. Akbar, for kicking it off, and Ms. Mansfield and everyone around the table, Dr. Hall for chiming in too. The times are definitely unprecedented, and that means the responses are probably going to be unprecedented as well. But I think hopefully, and unfortunately, the public doesn't get to see necessarily all of it, but there's a lot of passion behind each and every one of your voices, and that's been made clear to me today in the hours that we've spent, that we really do care about our employees and the children of this district and the families that we serve, and we want to make sure that everyone is taken care of. And we definitely have an amazing team around the room, from the superintendent to the assistant superintendent and the treasurer and all of their staff, to make sure that that happens. So thank you for putting in the couple hours today and coming out and making sure that we got work done. Anything else? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thanks, David.
We are adjourned.